All the great cities are built on rivers.
It took a tremendous cooperative effort to make this happen.
Think about what it looked like 10 years ago and what it looks like now.
A lot of us thought it was wishful thinking.
I've talked to Philadelphians and others who have come here, and they say, you guys don't know what you got down here.
Everyone in the city feels better about themselves.
It's really a great place.
It is good for the state as well as the city.
And it's still a story in the making, and it's a good story.
The initial vision was that of Russ Peterson and Bobby Marshall and a small group of others who understood the river and what its potential could be.
State Senator Bob Marshall and I met at a little parade, and it was a pouring rain. We stood under an umbrella and talked about what we could do to save this riverfront.
This gave rise to the task force that was appointed by Mike Castle, which after about 2 years came forth with the vision for the rivers, the document that was kind of our lodestar.
Finally, a plan was put together. But by that time, there was a change in administrations, and Governor Carper came into office.
I think it was the latter part of 1993. I'd been governor for less than a year, and Russ Peterson and Art Trabant came to see me.
These things don't work unless the governor gets behind them.
And they brought with them all kinds of architects' renderings, and to show what the riverfront could be: Riverwalk, river taxis, restaurants, theaters, museums, residentials, buildings, offices. I said, wow, this is incredible. I said, who's going to make this happen? And he said to me, you are. And I said, me? How about you? And how about Art Trabant here? And he said, you are. And I said, no, we will do this together.
It was, and always has been, a project that required the support of 4 governors: Peterson, Castle, Carper, and Minner. I reached out to a guy who had been governor of Maryland and mayor of Baltimore, William Donald Schaefer, and asked him to come up to Delaware and to walk the riverfront with me. He gave me some great advice. He said, what you should do, one of the first things you should do, is create what became our RDC, the Riverfront Development Corporation. He said, put on that RDC so the real movers and shakers in your community that have the real oomph, the real ability to make things happen. And that's exactly what we did. When I first got interested in this job, I had to call Tom Maloney up and ask him to help me find the river because I couldn't find it.
Where we had built 700 ships during World War II. I would just lay there, and the only people who came down here were a few homeless people.
I didn't even really know there was a river back there, because all I had ever seen were these old abandoned buildings.
Can you imagine that in World War II, 10,000 people a day worked down here? It's an enormous number of people. It's twice the people that go to Farley Stadium on a given night.
We had 40 leather companies doing hides in the city of Wilmington at one time, years ago. When all those industries died out, what do you do?
When people refer to us as pioneers, I always correct them and tell them we were the scouts. Because when we came down here in 1983...
there was nothing back here except a bunch of old industrial buildings that tended to block the notion that you're anywhere near a river.
There was very, very little else happening down here, and we sat alone for a long time.
When we came on board, I think if you ask Mike Hare, he would tell you that we thought the easiest project for us to accomplish would have been the wildlife refuge. It was one of those essential projects of the vision for the rivers.
Well, I used to come down here way back in the 50s, bird watching, bring my 2 boys down. Then they built I-95 and dumped all kinds of debris into the middle of that marsh and really messed it up.
The restoration of the marsh exemplifies what needed to be done down here.
We had to cross the tracks. We had environmental issues. We had so many complications to getting this finished.
A lot of people don't give them credit, but they eliminated so many bad spots on the riverfront. The brownfields that had just had all kind of mess buried underneath it. You can imagine now all of the species that will come back into that area that weren't there because of the way it was just treated. It was a wasteland.
I'm sure that if the birds and the fishes could vote, they would give us a great vote of approval.
We'll have a great education center and trails all through this beautifully restored marsh, which will all be a great way to always remember Russ for his outstanding contributions to this community and what he has stood for all his life. None of this would have happened without the contributions to the Pet Narrows. There's just no question about it. We put this property together and partnered to get Riverfront started. We started the shops, and Verino owned the Chase Center, and we leased it from him, and he was our landlord. He redid that entire center. Nobody else would have done that. The timing is a function of the marketplace as much as it's a function of your ideas. You can have all the ideas in the world, but if the private sector doesn't embrace your ideas, or the private sector doesn't want to invest, it's simply not going to work.
What drew us to the riverfront was the fact that we're by natural water. And being by natural water creates such a wonderful environment for employees, for the prospects that we bring in, really for everything we do.
If you look at the city of Wilmington, this is what's really stimulated their growth in the past, as well as what it's done for the state of Delaware when you look at the number of companies that have relocated there and the businesses that have grown there.
What we're creating here, I think the use of the old buildings is something that a lot of people are to be given credit for. And I don't know that it will be an architectural legacy down here, but it'll be certainly will be something that our grandchildren will be pleased with, just like we're pleased with the buildings that were built at the last turn of the century.
The public-private partnership that has occurred down here at the riverfront is just fantastic, and it's an example of how it can work.
The riverfront development, not just the commercial, but perhaps even more the residential that has occurred, really revitalizes the entire downtown area.
When we get Christina Landing fully occupied and then Justice and Landing occupied, there'll be several thousand people that live down here.
Housing will bring more restaurants, more office space, and I think it's part of what's needed.
So you really have built a whole new neighborhood.
But you can also see in nearby neighborhoods that there's an enormous amount of investment taking place, increasing property values, increasing services in those neighborhoods. So the ripple effect of Riverfront is going to be felt throughout this entire city.
I believe that over the next 2 years, I think the level of activity and the pace of development and progress will pick up, which is pretty impressive considering what's happened over the last 24 months in the city of Wilmington.
We want our legacy to be one of quality. We don't want to just say, look, we built 1 million square feet down here. We built something that's very special, that when people come to visit, they will recognize it as very special. It's hard to define, but you always know it when you see it.
The development on our riverfront, the Christina, has been very rapid compared to other cities. A lot of people don't know that Baltimore bought land for 20 years before Inner Harbor began.
It's been 10 years since the Riverfront Development Corporation was established, and it has moved very rapidly. At first, nobody wanted any land down here. Couldn't even sell it.
But now we do have a wildlife refuge that's being built. We have restaurants along the Riverwalk. We have the Riverwalk. And just accomplishing the Riverwalk, was a great effort.
You can't talk about Riverfront without talking about DelDOT because, a lot of this has been as a result of great DelDOT contributions. DelDOT, DenRec supported Riverfront. Without that, it doesn't work. The parking garage at the train station is one of the architectural icons of the Riverfront. It finishes off this little train station precinct, which is such a beautiful little square down here on the riverfront.
In fact, I talk to people all the time who ride the train through Wilmington, stop, maybe going either to New York or Washington, they'll say to me, "What's going on at that riverfront?" And I'll say, "Some good things."
We just did a $7 million restoration to the Chase Center, which is stunning, and it has taken us qualitatively to a place we've never been before. We're going to double our revenue in short order, and we're going to have a facility that makes Delaware and the city very, very proud.
We can't forget the ballpark either in the Blue Rocks because they do an outstanding job as well, and bringing young people in.
I think the riverfront area right now is so vibrant that it's like a magnet that's going to draw more and more great businesses and residences and entertainment and eatery facilities. I think it's the hot place to be.
What continues to amaze me is the amount of work that gets done by such a small staff.
Mike preceded me, and of course he's been my indispensable ally through this entire 10 years. Megan's been with us since 1997 and does a spectacular job on driving what I think will always be the center of the riverfront universe, and that's the Chase Center.
People think of 3M as being Scotch tape or Minnesota mining, but I think of the 3Ms as being Mike, and Megan.
You know, there's always someone who stands on someone else's shoulders. You rarely show up with nothing there and make something terrific.
It took a tremendous cooperative effort to make this happen.
We've got essentially 3 governmental agencies all with their shoulders to the wheel making Riverfront work.
Gosh, the legislature, Roger Roy, Patty Blevins were terrific in getting all kinds of financial support.
We get enormous support from Newcastle County.
The board and the group that work there, they've done an outstanding job, no question about that. But the city as well, and it's the partnership working with the businesses.
If it weren't for the Arkady Kuhlmans and the Richard Vagues, I don't think you'd have had the Robicinis down here. I hope it reaches its full potential as a legacy. Our expectations for the project continue to get higher, so our only failure is to fail to be the great project that I think we can be.
We're going to be a very great city in the next few years. We just got to have the leadership to keep pushing us forward.
It will serve as an example of what a community can do.
It will just keep going and going, and the other side of the river will probably be as developed as it is on this side right now.
I always see the glass as half full, and in this case, this glass is overflowing. There's only good things to come.
The riverfront will continue to grow, there is no question.
People are going to see things going on down there. They're going to come by after not being here for 10 years and say, impossible. There were junkyards here. You can't do that here, but it's been done. And I think that's something about which we can feel very proud.